Hey everybody. Let's see. We're going live here on lecture 23 on network security, and I'm going to drop a link into the Discord chat. I don't think anybody's up and cranking right now, but in the off chance that you are, it will be here. I'm going to do this in a little less than an hour. That is at least my idea. So let me get this dropped on the Discord chat. Again, I don't expect anybody to be watching necessarily. Just dropping a note into Discord. All right. Alrighty. So here's the deal. The way this thing organizes out, we've got lectures 23 to 28 that are, looking at my schedule here, 23 to 28 that are remaining, and they're all remaining ones on network security. What this one does is kind of goes over it's almost like an overview of the entire chapter, like a high level intro. Then we dive deep into like DES in the next lecture and RSA in the next one and message digest and authenticators. In other words, each topic gets a sort of deeper treatment in each of the next lectures. So this is very much a high level overview today for lecture 23. And I'm going to keep doing these. I'm going to try to do like one a day, one every 2 days, and then just get these pounded out so that they're just there for you and you can move at your own pace to wrap up the semester. Okay, so here's some terms. Horrible font, bad font alert, but here's some terms. And again, remember, I've got my big screen right here. There's a number of terms in the book. It kind of goes through these plus others, but these are the things we're going to be talking about. Cryptography or encryption is something that shows up everywhere. For example, I want to identify, like in each of these 4 bullets, encryption is a thing. That's kind of the point, right? So the privacy or confidentiality prevents the disclosure of information to unauthorized individuals, meaning that the idea is that people who shouldn't see the information can't get to the information, right? That's just the broad notion of privacy or confidentiality. That's really what we're trying to protect, right? When we authenticate, we're basically determining that the parties in the conversation are who they claim to be or are who we think they are, right? So authentication has to do with, can I really tell it's you, right? Data integrity is about the idea that the data didn't get corrupted somewhere. Now, the classic way that you think about data corruption, I think, is in the sense of, mangled packets. There's a sunspot flare up. Your data packets get scrambled somehow. Well, this one is more certain kinds of security attacks. Can be done with things like man-in-the-middle attacks and things where somebody can intercept your packet, change it in some way, and then send it on. So the packet itself does carry all the information that says who it's really from, but you caught it, changed it, and sent it. So it still looks right, so you have to protect against that kind of thing, which is data integrity. And then there's other approaches, which is in terms of privacy, where uh, I'm not going to stop you from seeing it, but what you see isn't going to make any sense because the content has been encrypted and cannot make any sense, right? So that's kind of the core idea. And one of the things that's really important to just point out is that security is a big freaking deal, okay? It's a really, really big freaking deal. And it is not hard to build insecure software. and this is not an area that's ever going to go away. One of the reasons, there's a statement in your book that says, um, it's trivial on a broadcast network like Ethernet, where any node can be configured to receive all the message traffic on that network. Wireless communication can be monitored without any physical connection. And it says more elaborate approaches, um, can be used. Only in the most extreme cases are serious measures taken to prevent such monitoring. And the internet is not one of those. Okay. It wasn't built to be, um, it really wasn't built to be carefully secure. It was very much ad hoc. So, in the old ancient days, this goes back to, I don't know what the year is on this one for these devices, but it was not uncommon. In fact, it was quite common for cryptographic devices to be implemented at a hardware level. Okay. Um, that's it, because the hardware had to be really specialized to do the math, so you had to have specialized math, specialized hardware. And this is just meant to point out that we don't need specialized hardware to do encryption. This is a, top secret biometric device. Fine. The cryptography is moving into generic devices. That's all that's really trying to say. Um, and what's interesting about this, I guess maybe it relates to this one, that over time, the cryptographic responsibilities have moved more to higher level layers in the protocol stack. And this is trying to articulate in red, right, the various protocol layers that deal with security. But also there are some, he mentions, Intel and AMD processors, et cetera, that actually have built-in security, like, so the ability to do those built-in calculations very quickly built into the hardware. So in a sense, it's almost like a return, back to the hardware. And we'll hit the ones we care about before we're done. Um, but what we're going to do right now is just talk about, it's just high level, and this is it's going to go fast. Are there any other things I want to hit here? Yeah, I don't like, anyway, I never like the slides. We're going to get to, let's just do this one next, just because it's not a bad opportunity to do some terms. Clear text or plain text is just the text before you've encrypted it or done anything. You can just read it. If you can grab the packet, you can read the contents, okay? Ciphertext is text that's been encrypted, messages that are in an encrypted form. The cipher is the algorithm or the means by which you scramble it, okay? And then a key, you can usually just think of as like a password or a passcode or a pass number. That cryptographic key is used kind of like a parameter that you hand in order to do the encryption. It's sort of like a parametric encryption, by which I mean that it's based on a parameter, right? You could have an encryption that just is what it is and everybody has it, and if you have it, you can see it, and if you don't, you don't. Um, but this is one where you can actually change, the encryption itself is altered based on the key that you use. I hope that makes sense. It could be a password. Typically, they need to be large, hard to guess, and as random as possible, and then not disclosed. Okay. It doesn't have to be a secret like with public key encryption. Um, and then, these expire after a certain amount of time, and it could be forever, kind of thing, because depending on the circumstance. Let me go backwards and talk about symmetric key encryption. The whole idea is that there is this key. If you look right here, there's the message, right? There's an encryption key and a decryption key, and they go together. It could be the same key, or it could be, complementary keys, right? If that makes sense. Could be the same key encrypts it, and then the very same key can decrypt it. or it could be that there's one key to encrypt and another key to decrypt. But either way, they are on both sides, and everybody has to keep it secret. It's not a public key environment. Okay. I wanted to just double check. I want to just say this, that, and this is again from your book, um, the basic requirement for an encryption algorithm is that it turn plain text into ciphertext in such a way that only the intended recipient, the holder of the decryption key, can recover the plain text. What this means is that encrypted messages cannot be read by people who do not hold the key. Again, I think it's pretty clear. We live in a world in which you've got, the password to your Wi-Fi, to make sure that only authorized people can be on it and things like that. Okay. Let me see. All right. So in this figure right here that we've got on the screen, I was looking up something where it was talking about it in your book. I mean, I got my notes, I got the book, and I'm trying to working on through here. If that's the normal environment where you have an encryption key and then a matching decryption key. Okay, this is the statement from your book. In a symmetric key cipher, both participants in a communication share the same key. In other words, if a message is encrypted using a particular key, then the same key is the one used for decryption. Okay, that is symmetric key. So this slide without those comments isn't fully accurate, because this isn't, strictly speaking, this is not symmetric key encryption, strictly speaking, okay, unless the encryption key and the decryption key are the same, okay? Um, and then we'll talk later about DES kind of down the stretch, and then we'll have an entire section on it, okay? And then we already hit the cryptographic terms. So, factors that determine the effectiveness, okay? Let's hit some of these. The length of the key. The longer the key, the more mathematics it takes to kind of to break it. If I have a key with only 5 possibilities, right? Let's just take like a master lock that has the 4 little spinny keys. Well, you can crack a lock like that in 10,000 tries, right? 9,900, from 0000 to 9,999, right? And then we call that brute force. That just means I try every possibility. And the sign of a really strong and healthy and good encryption algorithm is that it can't be fixed. It can't be cracked except with a brute force attack. Okay, then if the number of possibilities is 10,000, not a very good algorithm. That is about, padlocks are about security. But if there's, 3 gazillion possibilities and you've got to try every single one in order to break your way in, then that's a good thing. The strength of the algorithm, how well it hides the data, right? There's a bunch of classic naive ones, right, where you just move every letter just moves up 3, A becomes B, C, D. You know what I mean? That's not doesn't hide the data very well. It's easy to discern things. Um, if the cipher process is public knowledge, that's a good thing, because knowing it doesn't help you. Knowing what the algorithm is being used isn't going to help you. Um, Having the key be secret and kind of guaranteed to be secret, right? Well protected. It's not written on a post-it note by the laptop of the person who manages your server. Frequency of the key being changed and how often and how many messages you encrypt with the same key. When you're in a highly secure environment, that's a really, really big deal. There's a trade-off in sort of just commercial environments where the security risk isn't that high between, if they make you change your password every day, you can't remember your frickin' password, so that's a thing. Let me see. Oh, whether we can assume anything about the message content, because if I can make assumptions about what's in there, it reduces the complexity. Okay, and in fact, we'll talk just a bit about Enigma, um, and then the mode of operation, which I think we'll talk about. Well, I know we will. I know we will later. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In lecture 25. I wanted to say you may encounter a question that looks something like this. Which of the following is not a factor in determining how well an encrypted message is protected from disclosure? An encrypted message. And again, I always hate the which of the following is not. I hate those questions. But which of the following is a factor? Okay. Key length. Yeah, that's the first bullet, right? The longer the key, the harder to brute force it. Whether anything can be assumed about the message content, it needs to appear totally random. So that is also one. How frequently the key is changed. Again, that's right here, right? And again, the idea is that if they crack the key, boom, you've got a new key, right? With Enigma, they would change the key every single day, and it was a matter of trying to crack that with a new message every. In other words, get a message, intercept a message, and then crack the key that day because they were going to change it the next day. That was the race with Enigma. Um, a fourth option that is incorrect: the computational efficiency of the cipher. No, if it takes you a day to encrypt it, but the message is really important, that's okay. If you don't care, this isn't about the 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 how well an encrypted message is protected from disclosure there's no bearing based on how long it took you to do the encryption or how efficient the actual encryption algorithm was. Hope that makes sense. Um, let me see. Just checking my notes. Checking my notes. Um, oh, relative to DES, which is, well, actually, I'm going to come back. This is sort of goofy. I don't know why we started with symmetric key encryption and decryption up over there, because this is the taxonomy of the things we're talking about. Symmetric key, public key, and message digest, right? And you've heard of like SHA, I think. Everybody's heard about RSA, and you've probably maybe heard about DES and AES, and those are the symmetric keys. The number one thing I want to just say, and then it's like scrambled all over the place. Like there's another, okay, that's the same slide. Okay, that's why. But I want to pop over. Then here comes it doesn't make sense to me because it's like there's symmetric key. Then we go public, digest, and then back to DES, which is symmetric key. And I'm not going to go through this because we have an entire lecture that's coming about DES. I just want to say this, um, that DES was one of the earliest standards for symmetric key ciphers. And to this point in time, and crap, when did that happen? It's been around for a long time. Um, that no cryptanalytic attack better than brute force has been discovered. In other words, there's no attack on DES that is better, more efficient than brute force. Because here's the key: what you're trying to do with security is not make it impossible for someone to get in. And I think I talked about this in class last couple of weeks. You're not trying to make it impossible to get in. When you lock the door of your house, it's not impossible to get in. You can kick the door in. And I don't even care what you've got. You can kick the door in of an average home. What you're trying to do is just raise the cost of getting in. If someone's like tries the door and the door opens, well, why not stroll on in? If you try a car door, jiggity jiggity, and it opens, you might as well search the cigarette, the ashtray for coins, or pop cans in the back, you know. But if it's locked, you're like, ah, oh, dang it, I'll go to the next car. All you're doing is raising the cost. And if it takes you 1,000 years, that's effectively, impossible, right? Um, anyway, so that's all I really want to say about DES. Let me see. Yeah, I don't need to say anything more about DES right now. I'm backing it up. Let me go back. Yeah. Um, Oh, apparently I didn't know this, but Dave's old notes said that symmetric key algorithms are at least 4,000 years old. But that makes sense, right? I mean, like what do they call it? The Caesar cipher. You know, you change the character one off, or you like rotate the key. I mean, that's a symmetric key. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's asymmetric. I don't know. Anyway, but back to symmetric key. Oh, there we go. This one here, it doesn't have the message, and now it does. Both participants used the same key. Confusing on the slides, as always. Um, I highly recommend the imitation game. It is not 100% historically accurate, but anyway, the issue was in the imitation game that the Nazis would um, change their key every day. So the question was how fast you could encrypt it. But it turns out in the end they realized that all the messages contained certain words like many of the messages ended with Heil Hitler. Well, you just by virtue of that, you just made your message non-truly random. If you know what the last so many characters are, if you know that, right? And they knew that there was always a daily weather report. And so that there's that the things about weather, so terms involving weather, right? So once you could do that, you could look for the word weather, or I don't know what the words were exactly that they would search. And then the other one, oh, a couple of them. Numbers were always spelled out, so you could eventually figure out certain kinds of patterns involving numbers. And letters were never encoded as themselves. An E would never be an E, which actually, if you think about that, you know, you know what it isn't. You at least know if a letter, is whatever, a G, then you know for sure that the decrypted letter is not going to be a D. Well, in other words, it's now suddenly not fully random. And in order to be kind of uncrackable, other than brute force, it needs to be and feel very random. How do you break, like, you know, passcodes? What do you want? Their birthday, mother's maiden name, you know what I mean? City I come from. There's a bunch of classic. You're looking because people have to remember them. Well, in this case, it's not about remembering something about the passcode. It's about knowing something about the content that causes the message to have patterns in it that you can figure out. That's the idea. And then you may come across this question. What's the general name for encryption systems that use the same key to encrypt and decrypt a message, that use the same key? Symmetry, right? It's not any of the others. Okay. And we'll come back to DES later. Public key encryption is very funky. And I've been through it and I've written code to do it, and it's just really funky. But the idea is that there is a private key that is secret and a public key that is connected to that private key. So I can basically say anybody who wants to send me an encrypted message, I can give them my public key and make my public key public, but only I can decrypt it with my private key. So I've got to guard my private key. pretty, you know, intensely. But I can literally broadcast my public key to the world and have private messages um, sent to me, which is kind of interesting, right? Um, but it always requires two keys. This is not symmetric. It requires two keys. The keys are different, but they are correlated. Okay, um, they're related. Okay. Let's see. What is the general name for encryption systems that use a pair of keys, one to encrypt the data at the source and another to decrypt at the destination? And honestly, the source and destination don't really matter here in this question. Really, one, you encrypt with one key and you decrypt with the other. Now, the reality is that the correct answer is public key, but it's possible to have a two key system where both keys are secret. So I don't like the question because the fact that there's a pair of keys doesn't make it public key, but public key does have a pair of keys. It's not a great question. We're moving through here because it's just high level. It's just meant to be high level. So I'm okay if we move a little faster. We don't have to take a $1.15. Here's another one from, the best known public key encryption cipher is RSA. And let's see, it relies on the high computation cost of factoring large numbers. And now you're past me on the math. You're outside my mathy domain. It needs large keys. So RSA needs keys that are like 1,024 bits to be secure. Okay, that's when the computational cost of brute force becomes prohibitive, right? Let me read this from the book. Public key ciphers are unfortunately several orders of magnitude slower than symmetric key ciphers. Okay, so symmetric key ciphers are fast. Public key ciphers are slow. Okay, you got to just remember that. And so symmetric key ciphers are used for the vast majority of encryption, where the endpoints, share the same key. Public key gets used for authentication and session key establishment, which we're going to talk about, we'll talk about later on when we have lecture 26, where we're going to talk about authentication. Okay. Message digest. The idea behind message digest, again, just super high level. It's about ensuring the integrity of the data. It'll stop, man in the middle attack where I can like snag your packet and then send it on, right? Did the packet change during transmission? So what happens is, what you can see is we take the message and we apply a message digest algorithm. And essentially, it's like a hash function, like a hash based on the message. Then you append the hash to the message. Then you send it. When it gets received, the message is stripped off, the digest is peeled off, the message is peeled off. The very same message digest algorithm is applied to the original message, and then the two digests are compared to each other. If they're the same, then the message is okay. The message was not mangled in transit. That's it. Let me see. Yeah, we're going to come back. We're going to come back to this in greater detail. But question, what's the function of a message digest? We just talked about it. Let's talk about three bad ones and a good one. Here's a bad one. Allows one participant to authenticate the other without the need for clock synchronization between participants. We never talked about clock participation at all. Second bad answer, allows for secure distribution of a shared symmetric key. No, because the message digest isn't actually securing, it's not keeping messages private, it's only making sure that they get from endpoint to endpoint without being altered. So it could be, the message could be plain text or the message could be ciphertext. And the message digest doesn't care, okay? There's a third bad answer. Used to seed the generation of a shared master secret. You're just making crap up, but it's the same idea. No, you're trying to make sure, the key to remember is that the sender sends a message and the message gets a message digest attached. But if the message was plain text, they can still create a message digest. If it's ciphertext, still you can create a message digest. Here's a good answer. Provides assurance that a message has not been altered during transmission. Okay, that's DES, which we're not going to talk about in any greater detail, okay? Other than, as we've already said, that it's a symmetric key cipher. And we'll get into it next time. These are this is more kind of an FYI. I don't think this ever shows up, but these are the folks that kind of, in the world of crypto, NSA, which is part of the Department of Defense, the world's foremost crypto experts, trying to protect military communications, intercepting communications of other nations. The Five Eyes nations, Government Communication Headquarters, that's the UK. NIST, NIST, sometimes I've heard it said. That's a lab at the US Department of Commerce that approves commercial ciphers. Electronic Frontier Foundation defends civil liberties in the digital realm and opposes many NSA and FBI policies. ACLU defends civil liberties, legal counsel to EFF, etc. Okay, there's a quiz, which includes JPEG, MPEG, and the beginnings of security, 20 to 23. So get ready for that quiz. That's it. And we do go faster because you guys tend to ask some good questions, but without the questions, it goes faster. So what I'm going to continue to do, that's 23. I'm going to continue to pound on the rest of these. As soon as I'm ready to go, I'm just going to record it and put it up. I mean, we're dropping down to 5 people in class anyway. So I'm going to be, ping me on Discord and, get a hold of me if you have specific questions and, happy to respond. One of the things that'll happen is by getting all these lectures kind of put up and trying to get you prepped for the quizzes and the exams, is that does kind of free up class time, and then I can make that time available to meet with students or to, and my office hours are remotely on Discord during the pandemic. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got today. And then next week is there's no class next week because of the test, but I'm going to try to make it so there's no in-person class at all down for the duration that I just post on, stream to YouTube. So that's all I got.